I've always loved the outdoors. Camping alone felt peaceful until 3 encounters that still haunt me. Backyard. The year was 2019. It was summer, and I had just moved into a house with a big fenced-in backyard. I decided to pitch a tent and sleep over. My husband was away on a business trip, and I wanted to get some practice camping alone before we tried it on our upcoming vacation. I chose a spot far from the house near some tall trees. By 9 p.m., it was dark. I snuggled into my sleeping bag and started reading. An hour later, I heard voices near my tent. I froze. Was I just hearing things? Then I heard footsteps. Someone was walking around my tent. The hair on my arm stood on end. My imagination started running wild. What if a crazed homeless man had chosen my yard to set up camp? What if a group of teenagers had decided to sneak into my yard for a party? Or worse, what if an animal got into the tent? Fear tightened its icy grip around my heart. I told myself it was probably nothing. Still, I couldn't help but listen intently. Footsteps approached the tent again. I listened intently. I could hear someone pacing. I strained to hear what was being said, but all I could make out was muffled talking. About 10 minutes passed. Then I heard what sounded like a man's voice close to my tent. "Hey, are you in there?" I froze. Did he see me? What should I do? My mind raced. I considered yelling for help, but what if that made things worse? What if it drew whoever was out there closer? I wanted to crawl into a ball and hide or run inside, but fear kept me rooted to the spot. I remember thinking, why isn't this person knocking on the tent? I could pretend I wasn't in there. Maybe if I played dead, whatever was out there would eventually go away. That was when I heard the worst thing. Footsteps inside the tent. Something was scratching at the mesh netting that covered the tent. And then I saw a shadow pass over the opening. I let out a scream. I called the police and told them about the commotion in my yard. By the time they arrived, though, the person was gone. I sat huddled on the floor of the tent while officers searched the yard. One of them shone a bright flashlight inside the tent and asked me what had happened. As I recounted the story, an officer continued searching outside. Then he came back to the tent. "I found footprints," he said. He described them as belonging to a man's size 13 work boots. My husband's boots are size 12. Mine are size 8. We don't have anyone else in our family who wears work boots. And we certainly don't have anyone who wears size 13 work boots. That's when it hit me. This person had probably been watching my house for days. When the coast was clear, he entered my yard, walked around my tent and tried to get in. Had I not screamed, who knows what would have happened. I didn't want to think about it. The officer suggested I spend the night with a friend. After he left, I crawled into bed next to my husband, who had returned from his trip. I told him what had happened. Together, we scanned the yard, making sure everything was secure. Still, I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread. Who was this man? Why had he chosen my yard? Was he planning to return? To this day, I don't know the answer to those questions. Even living in a house no longer felt safe. The fire lookout tower. After the incident in my backyard, I needed a break from the city. I decided to head out of state for a long weekend and camp in a national park. I booked a reservation at an old fire lookout tower high up in the mountains. I had stayed there once before and loved the seclusion. The hike to the tower was beautiful, and when I finally reached it, I could see why it had become a favorite spot. The wooden structure wrapped around a massive stone chimney and had a wraparound porch with views for miles. Inside, there was a loft bedroom, a bathroom, and a living room, with a wood stove. I spent the first day hiking and taking in the scenery. I even made a new friend, an adorable fluffy dog named Scout. She belonged to a couple staying at a nearby cabin. When night fell, I built a fire in the stove and settled in for the evening. It was nice to be back in nature. The second night I was there, though, peace turned to terror. I was awoken in the middle of the night by footsteps. They sounded like someone climbing the stairs leading up to the tower. Whoever was out there was heavy-footed. How could I not have heard him coming? The only way to reach the tower was on foot. There were no cars or bikes allowed. I had hiked in with a day pack. I hadn't even brought a weapon to defend myself. I heard shuffling sounds outside the door. Someone was jiggling the handle. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to find the lock. The jiggling continued for several minutes. Then I heard the footsteps leave the porch. I stayed curled on the floor until sunrise. No one had climbed into the tower. But who was out there? Had he come back? I packed quickly and headed down the mountain. I didn't want to wait around to find out. The next night, I was staying in a hotel. Around 2 a.m., I was jolted awake. Someone was climbing the stairs again. I immediately called the police, who sent a patrol car by the tower. I waited anxiously for their call back. Then it came. The police had found a man near the tower. He had refused to leave after I had called and asked him to. He claimed he had nowhere else to go. When the police had arrived, he fled into the forest. They didn't catch him, but they did tell me the lookout tower would be secured until I returned to pick up my things. I grabbed my bags and drove away. The Alaska Highway. 3 years later, my husband and I decided to take a road trip. Our plan was to drive north along the Alaska Highway, stopping at scenic spots to camp. One afternoon, we were driving through a remote section of British Columbia. We decided to stop for the night at a deserted rest stop along the highway. We parked our SUV, which we had converted into a camper. By 9 p.m., darkness had fallen. The temperature was dropping. We had a small fire going, keeping us warm inside the SUV. Suddenly, a black pickup truck pulled in. The headlights illuminated 2 men who were staring directly at us. My husband and I looked at each other. Why had they stopped here? We kept quiet and watched them. They began walking toward us. My husband and I put our heads down. I don't know why, but we thought maybe if we pretended to be asleep, they wouldn't bother us. Hours passed. Then we heard scraping metal. Someone was trying to force our back door open. I started the engine and backed up, but the person kept trying to open the door. I gunned the engine and swerved forward. In the process, I knocked over the fire extinguisher. The person stopped trying to open the door. I drove away, not stopping until we reached the safety of a town. I often wonder who those men were and what they wanted. Epilogue. Those nights changed how I view the great outdoors. Before, I had thought nothing of backpacking alone. Now I always let someone know where I'm going and when I'll be back, and I never camp alone. I've shared these stories with many people, and most have thought they're crazy. But I know what I heard and saw. And sometimes, when I'm alone in the woods, I still hear those footsteps and feel the brush of unseen eyes upon my skin. If you've enjoyed this scary camping story, stay tuned for more spine-chilling tales.